Welcome. Today we are looking at idempotency as a design pressure in concurrent systems. A solution can look correct in a simple run and still fail once retries, timing, or duplicate delivery enter the picture.
So the real question is not whether it works once, but whether the important state is still protected under repeated input.
Exactly. We will connect the concept to invariants, evidence, and design decisions, because professional design has to survive pressure, not just a demo. Now that we have named the pressure, the lecture follows a loop. Start with the invariant, connect it to evidence, test it under failure pressure, and then choose a design response.
Why begin with the invariant instead of the mechanism?
Because the mechanism is only justified if you know what it is protecting. If you cannot name the condition that must stay true, you cannot defend the fix. An idempotent operation is one where repeating the same input does not create additional effect. The subtlety is that the code may still look fine when it runs once.
So the happy path can hide duplicate work.
Yes, retries, queues, or timing differences can cause the same action to be attempted again, and the design has to prevent that second attempt from doing extra damage. A common mechanism is an idempotency key, a unique request identity the server uses to recognize, "I have already seen this one." That lets the server return the earlier result or reject the duplicate.
Isn't adding a key enough by itself?
Only if the server stores and checks it correctly under retry and partial failure. The key is useful, but the invariant is still what matters. Repeated requests must not repeat the side effect. At the center of the topic is a system invariant, a condition that must stay true across all valid executions. The invariant comes first, before the mechanism.
What invariant am I actually protecting in a real system?
Often it is something like an external side effect occurs at most once per request, or a state transition happens only once. Once that is explicit, the implementation can expose it and the evidence can validate it. The failure mode is uncomfortable because a single demonstration may pass while the design is still wrong. Under pressure, you see duplicate side effects, stale state, blocked progress, or logs that do not line up with reality.
Why did this pass the sequential test if the design was wrong?
Because the test preserved the hidden assumption, one request, one execution, perfect ordering. The failure appears when the execution model stops matching that assumption. Any correction introduces a trade-off. Add checks, deduplication, retries, or coordination, and you usually improve safety and debuggability, but you pay with more storage, more logic, or more waiting.
So no option is universally best.
Right. The professional move is to name the quality you are protecting and the cost you are accepting. The best design is the one whose trade-off matches the pressure. Imagine a queue delivering the same event more than once. Worker A claims the event, performs the side effect, and then crashes before the acknowledgement succeeds.
So the queue redelivers even though the work already happened?
Yes, delivery count and execution count are not the same thing, so a reliable consumer has to check the idempotency store before repeating the effect. Here is the happy path mental model. Checkout publishes an order, the queue delivers it, the worker sends the notification or ships the order, and then the worker acknowledges completion.
What makes that model unsafe?
It assumes each step happens once, in order and without interruption. The moment retries or partial failure appear, that simple story is no longer enough to defend the design. Now make the failure concrete. Worker A ships order 42, then crashes before the acknowledgement reaches the queue. The queue redelivers the same event to worker B, and B ships the order again.
What evidence would prove that intraleaving actually happened?
You want the delivery identity, the worker logs, and the side effect trail. That lets you reconstruct the duplicate action rather than merely suspect it. The protected property in the corrected design is that retried events do not create extra side effects or hide lost work. The mechanism is a combination of idempotency keys, durable completion records, retry-safe handlers, and reconciliation when needed.
What trade-off does that introduce?
More complexity and usually more storage or bookkeeping, but that cost is justified if the system has to survive duplicate delivery instead of pretending it will never happen. When you defend an idempotency claim, evidence matters as much as the code. You want operation IDs, entity IDs, state transitions, and an audit trail that lets a reviewer reconstruct what happened.
What would go into the integrity packet as proof?
Structured logs, repeatable test output, a trace of the request and state change, and a before-after comparison if you applied a fix. That is the evidence that supports the claim. This comparison helps you choose the right response for the pressure you face. A simple baseline is easiest to build, but it often hides the problem. Guarded transitions protect the invariant directly. Explicit coordination makes ordering visible. Idempotent design handles duplicates well.
Which one should I choose first?
Choose the one that matches the failure you are trying to contain. Then justify the cost you accept, because the right answer depends on the workload, the workflow, and the evidence you need to show. This final piece ties the lecture back to the assignment mindset. Start with the assumption, create a pressure test that can break it, collect the observed evidence, and then justify the design choice.
So for A3, I need to show my own object or workflow the same way?
Exactly. Name the invariant, show the failure pressure, present the evidence, and defend the trade-off in the integrity packet.